My name is Rachel. I'm 34 years old. I live in Denver, and tonight I'm spending New Year's Eve alone in my one bedroom apartment. It's not tragic or dramatic, just quiet. I lit a lavender candle and pulled the little cork from a bottle of red wine I'd been saving since October. The soft hum of downtown traffic echoed through the double paned windows, and I told myself this year would be different, even if it started alone. I was reaching for the remote when my phone buzzed. It wasn't a text from a friend or even a Happy New Year message from family. It was an email from my mom with no subject line, just a PDF attachment. My stomach tightened before I even opened it. The file name said Engagement Dinner Split. I didn't know there had even been an engagement dinner. I hadn't been invited. But apparently I was still expected to pay for it. I clicked it open, blinking at the numbers like they might rearrange themselves if I stared hard enough. Total cost $3.60. Line item after line item, wine service, private dining room, celebration cake, then bolded at the bottom, your share, $1.530. There was no greeting, no question, just a charge for something I hadn't attended and hadn't even known about. I sat back on the couch, the candle flickering on the windowsill like it didn't notice the sudden chill in the room. That was the moment it all clicked. This wasn't about a dinner or a holiday. It was about the way they saw me. Not as a daughter, not as a sister, but as a wallet. I thought about all the times I had brushed things off, told myself it was a mistake, that next year would be better. But seeing that invoice made it impossible to pretend anymore. It wasn't an oversight, it was a pattern. And that night, as the city lit up with fireworks and the neighbors upstairs screamed a countdown into the ceiling, I didn't feel forgotten. I felt erased. And for the first time in years, I decided maybe I was done waiting for an invitation. When we were little, Noah and I were inseparable. He was 2 years younger with freckles across his nose and this laugh that bounced off the kitchen walls like a song. Every December, we'd bake gingerbread cookies with Mom while Dad played old jazz records in the background. Our fingers would be sticky with molasses, and we'd sneak icing behind Mom's back, giggling like we were pulling off the heist of the year. On Christmas morning, we always opened gifts together, taking turns even when he got more. Back then, I didn't mind. I remember one winter when Dad lost his job, things were tight. I stopped asking for piano lessons, told Mom I didn't like them anymore, even though I loved every second at that bench. Noah still got his new snowboard that year. No one said it out loud, but he was the light, the center. I just tried not to add any weight. It wasn't always obvious, just small things. If Noah forgot to do homework, it was shrugged off. When I got a B+, I'd get the long speech about expectations. I never thought of it as unfair then. I thought it was trust. I was the steady one, the helper, the extra pair of hands when things got messy. I wore that like a badge. But looking back now, I see how the seeds were planted. The way I leaned into being useful, the way they leaned into letting me. We were close, yes, but the roles were never equal. I just didn't know it yet. As we got older, things shifted in small, almost invisible ways. At first, it was missing one family dinner, then a birthday call that never came. I chalked it up to busy lives and mixed schedules. But the pattern grew louder. Holidays came and went without my name on the invite list, without a text or even a photo shared after. Meanwhile, Noah's life became the centerpiece. When he lost his job last spring, he called me in a panic. His resume was a mess. 2 pages of scattered roles, typos, no story. I stayed up late for 3 nights rewriting every line, building him a fresh narrative. I designed a new template, drafted a confident cover letter, and even mock interviewed him on Zoom to settle his nerves. When he got the job, I felt proud. Not because anyone said thank you, but because I knew I'd helped him step forward. A week later, the family group chat blew up with celebration, fireworks emojis, champagne toasts, inside jokes. I wasn't tagged. No one even thought to include me in the thread. That was when the ache set in. It wasn't anger. It was something slower, quieter, like being erased one layer at a time. I told myself it was fine. I didn't need fanfare, but deep down I wanted to be seen. I wanted someone to remember who stood in the wings helping him shine. It didn't come. Not a text, not a nod, just more silence. This was the quiet exile. The email didn't even have a subject line, just her name and a PDF. I opened it, thinking maybe it was a New Year's message or something simple, like a photo from a relative I hadn't seen in a while. But it wasn't a greeting. It was an invoice, 3 pages long, titled Engagement Celebration, Itemized Breakdown. My stomach went hollow before I even scrolled. There it was, the venue, the dinner, the wine pairings, a dessert cart, handwritten name cards, all for a night I hadn't heard a word about. At the bottom in bold, it read total $6, $120. Your share, $3.60. There was no note, no context, not even a hello. I read it 3 times, my thumb hovering over the screen, expecting more. Maybe a message that said, "We meant to include you," or even "Hope you're doing well." But there was nothing, just numbers and an expectation, a request made with the same carelessness as tossing a receipt across the table. The candle I had lit earlier still flickered beside me, lavender and bergamot. I'd picked it out on purpose to make the apartment feel calm, warm. But now, the scent made my head spin. I set the phone down and stared at the wall. I had bought a bottle of wine to mark the new year, poured a glass, tried to make peace with another quiet evening. And instead, I was staring at an invoice for a dinner that celebrated someone else's joy in a room I hadn't been welcome in. I tried to tell myself it was a mistake, that maybe they had meant to invite me, that maybe my mom had just forwarded the invoice out of habit, forgetting I hadn't been there. But I knew better. They hadn't forgotten, they had chosen, just like they'd done the year before, and the year before that. It wasn't about missing a party. It was about being expected to fund something I wasn't invited to contribute financially to a family I was no longer emotionally part of. The room felt too quiet. The wine sat untouched. I could hear the upstairs neighbors laughing, some kind of party music just loud enough to seep through the walls. I wondered if they had sisters, brothers, parents calling to say, "Happy New Year." All I had was a 3-page bill and the slow, sharp realization that I wasn't a guest at the table. I was the one picking up the tab. I sat with the phone in my lap, the glow from the screen fading into sleep mode. It was almost funny if it didn't sting so much. $3,000 to remind me I didn't matter enough to be there, only enough to help cover the cost. I thought about last Christmas. They had rented a cabin in Aspen, filled it with twinkle lights and laughter, and I found out through a cousin's Instagram post. The caption said family time, but I wasn't in the photo because I hadn't been invited. The year before that, it was Thanksgiving. My mom told me they were keeping it small, just the immediate family. I baked a pie anyway, just in case. No one called. Before that, it was my dad's birthday. Noah threw him a surprise dinner, and when I heard about it later, he said it must have been a mix-up, that someone else had sent the invites. But he never asked how I felt about being forgotten. At first, I made excuses for them, told myself I was the busy one, the one who lived far away, the one who didn't need anything. I wore it like a badge. Independent, self-sufficient, the girl who didn't ask for much. But slowly, that badge started to feel like a cage. Because they leaned on it, used it. If I wasn't invited, I wouldn't cause trouble. If I was excluded, I'd stay quiet. If they sent a bill, I'd pay it. That's who I had become to them. The stable one, the helpful one, the one who always showed up but never needed a chair pulled out for her. And that night, holding that invoice, I realized it wasn't just hurt, it was clarity. They didn't see me as family, they saw me as funding. I hadn't been invisible, I'd been useful, that was worse. The ache wasn't loud anymore. It had settled into something colder, something that no longer reached for them, that no longer held out hope for a warm reply. I wasn't sad in the way I used to be. I was done pretending this was still something it wasn't. This time, I wasn't brushing it off. I wouldn't tell myself next year might be different. I wouldn't bake pies no one asked for. I wouldn't check my phone hoping for an invitation that wasn't coming. They had shown me exactly who I was to them, and from that moment on, I decided to believe them. I opened the Venmo app with hands that didn't shake. I typed in the family account, the one we'd all used for years. Instead of the $3 or $60, they expected I sent exactly $1. In the note section, I wrote, "Sorry Santa skipped me this year too." Then I hit send and stared at the little green check mark. It was a small act, maybe even petty, but it felt clean, like exhaling after holding your breath too long. I didn't stop there. I opened my Netflix account and changed the password. Hulu was next, then Amazon Prime. One by one, the streaming services I'd been paying for, all in my name, most of them never thanked for, were stripped away. I clicked through menus, hit cancel, unchecked boxes. No rage, no second thoughts. Just a rhythm that made sense. The Spotify family plan, gone. The shared Instacart renewal, canceled. The Disney Plus account that only Noah's kids used, removed. They probably didn't even know half of these were under me. I used to cover them out of convenience. Told myself it was easier this way, quieter, kept the peace. Back then I justified it, said to myself I make more, or it's just a few dollars. But that math never included what it cost me emotionally. I logged into the phone plan next, my name at the top, 3 lines under it. One was mine, the other two, Mom and Noah. I paused for a second, then opened the transfer page. It felt strange at first, like I was breaking something. But then I realized I wasn't cutting them off, I was cutting myself free. I froze the 2 credit cards they used. Both were under my name originally for emergencies. But the emergencies always seemed to benefit someone else. One click, then another. I called the bank to request new cards, new numbers, fresh starts. With every step, I felt a layer peel away. Not guilt, not obligation, just years of habit I no longer needed to carry. I remembered the first time I offered to help pay the family phone bill. Noah had lost his job. Mom was worried. I was 26, barely scraping by myself, but I said yes. They never went back. I never asked them to. I just kept covering more until the help became expected, and my silence became agreement. Now I was rewriting that agreement. No yelling, no announcement, just a quiet log out. I closed my laptop and sat on the edge of the couch. The room looked the same, but something in me didn't. I felt steady, not proud, just clear. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to be generous. I wasn't trying to be the bridge. I was just drawing a line. I used to believe setting boundaries meant slamming doors or raising my voice. But it turns out sometimes it's just a string of small actions, a quiet refusal to keep giving what was never valued. The dollar I sent didn't make up for the years I spent being invisible. But it was a beginning, a marker. I wasn't asking to be included anymore. I wasn't begging for fairness. I was done sponsoring a dynamic that made me feel small. I looked at my phone again. No new messages yet, but I knew they'd come, confused, angry, maybe even dramatic. That wasn't my concern. My job wasn't to manage their reactions anymore. My job was to protect the version of myself that finally understood what she deserved. That night, I tucked my phone into a drawer and left it there. No guilt, no flinching, just a deep, quiet breath. And for the first time, I slept like someone who had finally chosen herself. The first message came at 8:12 a.m. from my mom. It just said, "Is Netflix down?" No hello, no good morning, just panic over her shows. By 8:20, she followed up with 3 question marks. At 8:27, my phone lit up with a missed call from my dad, then another, and another. I flipped the phone over and let it vibrate against the table. I wasn't ready to answer questions they'd never bothered to ask when it mattered, like how I was doing, or if I had plans for New Year's Eve. At 9:04, Noah chimed in on the group chat. His message read, "Real mature. This isn't how family acts." It made me laugh a little. Not loud, just a quiet single breath through my nose. Family. Now he wanted to talk about family. Where was that energy when they left me out of the engagement party? When they sent a bill but not an invitation? When I spent last Christmas reheating soup and watching reruns alone? They noticed my absence now, not because they missed me, because their comfort was disrupted. I didn't feel angry reading their messages, just distant, like I was watching a rerun of a show I'd already outgrown. There was no apology in any of their words. No acknowledgement of the years they leaned on me without asking how much it cost. Only confusion that their access was suddenly gone. I poured myself a second cup of coffee and sat by the window. The snow outside had started to melt, thin sheets of ice cracking along the pavement. That's how it felt. Like something frozen in me was finally breaking apart, not with force, just slowly, quietly. They could keep calling, they could send paragraphs. I wasn't going to explain what they already knew. I didn't owe anyone a tutorial on how boundaries work. So I left the phone on the table screen down and let it ring. I had errands to run, groceries to buy, a full life to live that had nothing to do with buffering TV shows or frozen login screens. The call came just after lunch. I didn't recognize the number, but something in me said to answer. A woman's voice came on, polite and measured. She introduced herself as Erica from the bank's fraud department. There had been a report of unusual activity on an account linked to my name. My dad had flagged it. I felt a flicker of something between amusement and disbelief. Of course he had. I let her list the charges, canceled cards, changed passwords, new account numbers requested. When she asked if I was aware of the changes, I said yes, calm, no extra words, just yes. She paused, then asked if I authorized them. I told her I did. I'm the account holder. She asked if I wanted to proceed with closing the fraud case. That's when the words came out without me even thinking. There's no fraud here, just a family that mistook me for a doormat. There was a pause. Then I heard her laugh just a little, the kind of laugh that said she understood more than she could say. She thanked me for confirming and said she'd note it in the file. I thanked her too, not just for the help, but for how easy it had felt to say the truth out loud. After we hung up, I sat there for a moment, phone still warm in my hand. It was quiet in the apartment, no buzz of messages, no tension in my chest. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't said anything cruel, but something about that conversation felt like closing a door I should have locked years ago. I stood up, stretched, and went to wash a few dishes. Nothing dramatic, no big finale, but inside something had shifted. They'd tried to paint it as theft. All I'd done was take back what was mine, and I'd done it with both feet on the ground. The days that followed were quiet, not the kind of quiet that makes you feel forgotten, but the kind that fills a room like sunlight through clean windows. I started waking up without dread. I brewed tea in the mornings, letting the warmth fill my hands as I stood by the window. Snow drifted past, slowly softening the rooftops and sidewalks. I watched without rushing, without needing to be anywhere I didn't choose. One afternoon, I walked to the florist on the corner and bought myself a bouquet of tulips, yellow and pale pink. I didn't wait for anyone else to think I deserved them. In the evenings, I made warm meals just for me. Roasted vegetables, soft pasta, the kind of food I used to only make when company came over. Now I lit a candle anyway, even if I was eating alone. I went to a beginner yoga class on a whim. My muscles ached afterward in the best way. Something about moving through poses in a quiet room made my thoughts feel less tangled. An old friend from college reached out. We got coffee and laughed over stories we hadn't told in years. It felt light and easy, like remembering a part of myself I hadn't spoken to in a while. I didn't check the family group chat. I didn't scroll through their social media. The silence had stopped feeling like absence. It started to feel like space. For the first time, I wasn't trying to guess who I needed to be. I was just being. Walking through the grocery store with no urgency, reading a book under a blanket, letting my phone die without guilt. As the end of the month approached, I made a reservation for one, a small restaurant downtown with soft lighting and booths by the window. New Year's Eve again, but this time by choice. I wore my favorite dress and my old wool coat. I ordered a steak and a glass of red wine. The waiter asked if I was waiting for someone. I smiled and said, "No, not tonight." The restaurant was warm, couples clinked glasses, a family in the corner passed around dessert. I sat back and watched it all, not with envy, but with ease. When the clock hit midnight, people around me cheered. The sky outside flashed with fireworks. I raised my glass not to anyone else, but to myself. I thought of the last New Year's Eve, the sting of that invoice, the hollow of not being remembered. And then I looked around the room, felt the steady rhythm of my breath, and knew something had shifted. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, but it was real. I didn't need them to include me anymore. I had included myself, in my own life, in my own peace. On the walk home, the streets were dusted with fresh snow. My boots crunched softly on the sidewalk. The cold air on my face felt clean. When I stepped inside, I didn't reach for my phone. I made tea, changed into pajamas, and sat on the couch with a thick blanket pulled to my chin. The room was still, but inside me there was movement, a sense of finally having come home to myself. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't wish things were different. I just exhaled long and slow. Because sometimes the greatest gift isn't noise or company or even love. Sometimes the gift is silence and knowing that it's yours. The email came on a Thursday morning. The subject line said, "We're still family." Inside just one line, "We should talk." I stared at it for a long time. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I finally did. I typed exactly what I felt. "Exactly, so why did you forget that for so long?" Then I hit send. No follow-up, no invitation for more. Just one truth sent back like a mirror. He didn't reply. Or maybe he did, and I just never checked. That message wasn't for him anyway. It was for me. A few days later, Noah sent a text. "You're tearing this family apart. You owe us an explanation." I read it once. Then I closed the thread. There was nothing left to explain. This wasn't about punishment. It wasn't payback. It was me finally seeing the shape of the space I'd lived in all those years. They weren't angry that I'd left. They were angry they could no longer take from me freely. They missed what I gave them, not who I was. I didn't block them. I didn't delete anything. I just let the silence grow where my responses used to be. The quiet didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned, like a room I had cleaned out myself slowly over time. I walked past pictures of us in better years. I didn't cry. I didn't wish to go back. I just acknowledged them and kept walking. Some part of me still loved them. I think some part always will. But love doesn't mean you stay where you're not seen. It means you choose peace, even if you have to build it alone. What they called distance, I called healing. What they called dramatic, I called honest. This wasn't revenge, it was clarity, a long overdue line in the sand. They didn't know what to do with a version of me that didn't bend. But I did. I knew exactly what to do. I stood still, I stayed quiet, I didn't go back. And in doing that, I finally moved forward. It was a warm afternoon in early spring when I found myself sitting alone at a corner table in a small cafe near City Park. The windows were open and the breeze carried the smell of cut grass and fresh bread. People passed by on the sidewalk laughing and calling out to each other as they spotted familiar faces. No one called my name, no one waved me over, and for the first time it didn't hurt. The cafe was busy, but I didn't mind the hum. I sipped my iced tea and watched a group of friends pull tables together, dragging chairs into a circle that grew with each new arrival. Their energy was light easy. A year ago, I might have felt that hollow ache in my chest. That tug that asked, why not me? Why didn't I have a seat in circles like those? But now the absence felt different. It didn't sting, it simply existed. I thought about all the dinners I used to beg to be part of, the ones where I waited for a text or a call that never came, the birthdays where my name was an afterthought, the holidays where I sat in silence while they toasted to each other. For years, I thought if I just gave more, they'd see me. If I covered more, showed up more, forgave more, they'd finally make space. But the table was never set with me in mind. It had room for what I brought, not who I was. Now I look down at my own plate, a toasted sandwich, a side of fruit, a simple meal I'd chosen for myself. I felt full in a way I hadn't known I could be. Across the cafe, someone's dog barked and a baby squealed with laughter. The noise was all around me, but inside, everything was quiet. I had stopped waiting for them to pull out a chair. I had stopped hoping to be noticed. Somewhere along the way, I'd built something steadier. A home inside myself. A rhythm of life that didn't bend around someone else's plans. A softness that didn't depend on approval. I didn't resent them. I didn't wish them harm, but I also didn't miss who I became when I was trying to fit into their story. I had my own now, and it was enough. I picked up my journal from the table and opened to a blank page. I didn't write anything right away. I just held the pen and listened to the wind move through the trees outside. There was a time when I thought being needed was the same as being loved. That usefulness was a kind of worth. That sacrifice earned belonging. But none of that is true. I am not worthy because I give. I give because I am already worthy. The waitress brought the check, and I left a tip that made her smile. Not because I was trying to prove anything, but because kindness felt good, and it was mine to offer. I stood stretched and walked outside into the soft sun. The world moved around me, not faster, not louder, just steady. I had a seat now, not at their table, but at one I'd chosen. And this time, I wasn't afraid to sit alone. Because I wasn't waiting to be called, I was already home. If you've ever sat quietly in a room full of people you love and still felt invisible, I want you to know I see you. If you've bent yourself into someone else's shape, just to be accepted, only to realize they still didn't look your way, I've been there too. And if the only time they call your name is when they need something, you're not imagining it. It's okay to want to be chosen. It's human to long for that seat at the table, for someone to say, you matter, without needing anything in return. But sometimes that seat stays empty, not because you aren't worthy, but because they were never looking. I used to think being the responsible one meant I didn't get to be soft. That love had to be earned by fixing, by showing up, by paying without asking. But I've learned that love without respect is just obligation in disguise. You are not too sensitive. You are not asking for too much. You are asking to be seen for who you are, not just for what you give. And that's not selfish. That's survival. That's dignity. I can't promise it won't hurt. Letting go of people you still love is one of the hardest things a heart can do, but peace is worth that ache. You're not broken for choosing silence over guilt. You're not cold for deciding that enough was enough. You're brave for finally putting yourself first. So if you're here watching this, wondering if you're allowed to stop trying so hard, I'll tell you what I wish someone had told me. You don't need permission to protect your peace. You only need the truth of how you feel. And here's the question I leave with you. What if choosing yourself is the only way to be chosen? If this spoke to something in you, share your story in the comments. Or don't. Just know you're not the only one. You're not alone. Take a breath, let it land, then decide, because this time you get to choose.